Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Looking at a book from the Child Poverty Action Group in their series of handbooks. These are advice books which are very, very helpful for people, vulnerable people mainly, and people who need quite substantial assistance when they're dealing with the welfare system, the legal background to what we call welfare law. The book that I'm looking at today is a book which to some people could be controversial, but it's a very important book. We have a lot of issues concerning immigration, which is a major problem to some people at the moment, but we do have benefits for people who come to this country. This book deals with that. It's Benefits for Migrants Handbook. It's now in a 6th edition from the Child Poverty Action Group. There it is, that's the front, there's the back. It's quite a heavy book, this one. There's a bit of information on the back. There's a shaded area which you can see there, which is the main content of the book, and then at the back you've got an index, which is a very detailed one, which helps you find things. Then you've got 7 appendices. You can see them there, and I'll deal with those later. They cover things like abbreviations, passport stamps, publications, publications and addresses, information and advice, and a glossary of terms, which is the first part there. The point about it is that you do need to know where to find things when you're dealing with benefits issues. That's the front page of it there. The book's been written by Rebecca Walker, Timothy Lawrence and Michael Spencer. There's a little list about who they are there and what they do. Then you've got some acknowledgements, and then you've got the contents itself. There's a lot of information. Part 1, introduction, part 2, so forth. Various chapters there, moving through. And then you've got part 9, chapter 25. And then you've got the 7 appendices. Then we get into the book itself. There's a little set of abbreviations at the front. You'll find some more at the back as well. And then you've got how to use this book. Always read that because it tells you basically how the book is set out. You've got a nice little short index at the front of where the chapter heading is, and that tells you what's in the book. And then you've got the content itself. It explains what the content is and how you actually use the book. And then it covers things like finding the relevant law and relevant information, checking the rules and so forth, the relevant law there. Then you get into immigration law itself and the issues concerning that. You've got all the relevant legislation and so forth, and then you the book runs through there. And there's a huge amount, for instance, this is about residence, a huge amount of information, European Union rules there. And then you've got things such as support for asylum seekers. So it's a very important book. You will find it in your local Citizens Advice Bureau, I would have thought. It will be in the library too. It's an important reference book for people, and it's relatively easy to read. That's another important point, because most law books can be incredibly complex. We do tend to use our own language to a certain extent, and it can become very confusing, especially to people whose first language, of course, is not English. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I have had a look at this book, and we've come up with a title. We say an important hands-on advice handbook. I've used that expression before, but that's what it is. It's this hands-on advice handbook for migrants from the Child Poverty Action Group, which is now in the 6th edition. And this is what we say about the book. The 3 experienced authors, Rebecca Walker, Timothy Lawrence and Michael Spencer, have fully revised and expanded this excellent handbook for its 6th edition. And as they say, it's the essential guide for European Economic Area nationals, asylum seekers and refugees, families with different immigration statuses, British citizens returning from abroad, and other migrants who need to navigate the complexity of the immigration and benefit rules in what is an emotionally charged atmosphere here in the UK at the present time. Now, obviously, we are dealing here with difficult matters, something I deal with in my own practice, because the actual hearings take place quite near to where my chambers are. Now, these are not easy cases at all, and you do need to try to explain what is actually available. This book fills the gap, I think. The three authors have actually restructured the book, making it easier to use, and they continue what I think is a fine record for the Child Poverty Action Group by establishing their own handbook series of these advice manuals, which I don't think we could do without, frankly. They are the first port of call for many people. This title, like others covering all aspects of what are difficult areas of welfare law, has become well established and highly regarded. It makes a major and certainly vital contribution to the aims of the CPAG, which exists to promote action for the prevention and relief of poverty among children and families with children. That includes migrants, because they will have families just like everybody else, and that's the purpose of this organisation. Do read the introductory chapter, which sets out how to use the book by checking the rules which may affect you and finding out about the relevant law. The biggest single problem, both for readers looking for advice and for advisors, is that the law determining benefit entitlement for migrants is both complex and frequently changing, a problem now covering many other areas as well, especially in welfare law. Why they make it so complex is just beyond my understanding, but if they get hold of it in Parliament, I'm afraid this is the problem we have to put up with. A little bit of simplicity would go a long way, frankly, but there we are. The book has been produced and updated by this team of experts from CPAG in these ever-changing and complex areas of law. And this particular handbook, I think, has become the standard text for any professional advisor. Again, as I say, for the first port of call, you may need something a bit more, depending on what the actual issue is. But it does give you a lot of basic information, and it sets out what the law is, effectively, and where your rights are. It sets out, therefore, a systematic approach to the rules, which, as I say, are ridiculously complicated and bureaucratic as always. And it is time, as I say, for the rules to be made simpler, but we fear that way is a long way off yet, I'm afraid. It is to be hoped that one day simple, straightforward sets of rules can be devised which everyone can understand with ease. We have the ability, available with the clarity of the judgments which many senior judges regularly produce in their judgments. Think of Court of Appeal and Supreme Court judgments, where if you read them, they are actually quite easy to read. They're not completely twisting themselves around with the English language. They are clear, in other words, with clarity. So it's just a pity that the drafted rules we have are so difficult to understand. But that's where we come in as advisors, and the book itself will help. So if, as I say, we're a long way off the ideal concept of making it simpler, but the CPAG handbooks go, I think, a long way towards the helpful approach needed to understand the difficult and worrying rules we have. So follow the 7 steps which are set out in chapter 1. That's on about page 3, which we feel of great assistance in how you deal with the issues you're facing. The final word of thanks goes to Walker, Lawrence and Spencer for producing a readable handbook, which is authoritative and of immense practical use to advisors when confronted with all the usual suspects, delays, the need to provide evidence, and the problems with the enforcement of rights. It also offers tactics in an easy-to-read format, and these 7 appendices, which I indicated, contain a massive amount of useful detail, without which any application being made faces serious obstacles and obstructions. So thank you, CPAG, for maintaining these high-level advice manuals for the vulnerable. The law is as stated at the 1st of June 2014. Let me just remind you of the book again. There it is, paperback. There's the back of it. Let me just show you the steps which I mentioned earlier, which is actually here. We'll get to it. The checklist there. The checklist of rules, very important to give you an idea of what you need to do. It's actually mentioned there are steps 1 all the way through. I'll just put it near the camera there, if you can see it. That helps you because, as I said, the rules are complicated, but that will give you some assistance. Then there's an issue concerning disability and carers benefits and so. I think they've tried to cover every single major point that we would be facing, and I welcome the book and I thank them very much to all people concerned for this work. It's of invaluable support to us when we are advising clients. So thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.